If you have written the introduction to your Of Mice and Men essay and you're ready to write your first body paragraph, then this is the right video for you. First, I want you to begin by taking out two documents and putting them side by side on your computer. You need to have your Of Mice and Men essay prep, and you need to have your Of Mice and Men essay organization. Go ahead and pause this video and then come back. Okay, go ahead and scroll down to your body paragraph number 1. And I want to remind you that when you write this first body paragraph of your essay, you will need to include a minimum of 8 sentences for college prep and 11 sentences for honors. The reason why there's 8 sentences for college prep and 11 for honors is that honors you are including an additional 3 sentences, so you have to add an additional evidence sentence and 2 sentences of analysis in order to complete the paragraph. So basically what you will need to do is you will have to copy a chunk of information, an ES, an A1, and an A2, copy those. You will then, if you go to the last box here, second to last box, and you right click it, it gives you an opportunity to insert some rows below. You want to insert a row, and you want to do that actually 3 times. Insert row below, insert row below, and you are going to paste an additional evidence sentence analysis into your paragraph. So I'm going to undo that for here because I'm only going to go over 8 sentences for this, but just know you have to do that for both of your body paragraphs if you're an honors student. So I'm going to undo that section, and that brings us back to 8 sentences, and I'm going to instruct today based upon 8 sentences for each body paragraph instead of 11, and honors you can go back and you can add those to your paragraphs. Okay, so if we are going into the assumption that there's 8 sentences in a body paragraph, remember that you are going to include a subclaim, evidence sentence, and then 2 sentences of analysis, so it's this whole chunk, and then another evidence sentence and 2 sentences of analysis about that evidence sentence, and then you will have a concluding sentence. So all in all, you would have 8 sentences total, where if you're an honors student, you're just going to add these additional 3, and you'll have an additional evidence and analysis for those that are for the 1 extra piece of evidence. Okay, now here's the good news. You have already written your subclaim. This sentence is done. You also have already written your evidence sentences. And so even if you're an honors student, you have 3 sentences you've written, and honor or college prep, you wrote 3 sentences as well, but you just have to choose the best 2 that you are going to use to represent in your paragraph. So we're going to go back to this document of Mice and Men essay prep, and we're going to just copy the information over. This information, if you scroll all the way down to your subclaims, this information is not only written, but it also has been looked at by me if you turned it in on time. And you hopefully have had an opportunity to improve whatever it was that you had there if needed. So you're going to copy that one, and you're going to your first evidence sentence, and you're going to put it here. And to save us time, I'd like you to also copy the evidence sentence for body paragraph number 2. And you're going to scroll down to body paragraph number 2, and you're going to insert your subclaim there. So even though you don't have to actually write your body paragraph number 2 today, you're going to go ahead and get the information on there so you don't have to open this document again. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is make sure you get the right evidence for this body paragraph. So these 2 pieces of evidence here and here have to relate to whatever your subclaim was. So my subclaim says, when Slim exhibits power over Curly by expressing frustration at Curly's accusation and threatening Curly's reputation, I'm going to add a comma, the reader begins to realize that standing up for one's beliefs and values is necessary to protect oneself and others. So now what I need to do is I need to go back and I need to find these 2 pieces of evidence where he expresses frustration at Curly's accusation and the other one where he threatens Curly's reputation. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my evidence. Now, ahead of time, I had determined, if you remember, in my main claim, that my first body paragraph was going to be about how Slim is the most powerful character because he's courageous enough to challenge people who have more power than he does. And that's what this body paragraph is about. So I had decided that those were going to be in green to just kind of keep my thinking straight. So when I go back here, I already know which two pieces of evidence I'm going to choose. Plus, I also know I'm going to use this one first and this one second because this one simply happens first in the book and this one happens second in the book. So I'm going to put them in order based upon when they appear in the book. So I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to come over to where it says evidence sentence, and I'm going to just paste it in there. I'm going to do the same thing for the second one, and I'm going to paste it in there. Okay, now I'm going to go to the second body paragraph and just get this done so I don't have to open this document again. And my second body paragraph is going to be about how he's respected by his peers for empathy he demonstrates in moments of great tension. So I have three that I showed that would work in this moment. But before I did this video, I decided I was going to use this one here and this one down here. So I'm going to go to body paragraph number 2, because this is for my body paragraph number 2. And I'm going to choose this one, where he influences him with Candy's dog, and paste it. And then how he uses his power to comfort and show empathy here. I'm going to put that under evidence sentence number 2. So here's the good news. You started out today realizing that you had to write 8 sentences, but in actuality you don't. You have to write 5 sentences because you already wrote your subclaim and you already wrote your evidence sentences. And those should be ready to go by now if you've made the changes to this document. So at this point, you don't need this document anymore. So you can just go ahead and take this document and make it really large on the page. And that way you can probably work a little bit better. Okay, so before I write my analysis, I have to remind myself, what is it that I'm asserting in this paragraph? What is my argument? And what is my opinion? So what I am saying is that when Slim exhibits power over Curly by expressing frustration at Curly's accusation and threatening Curly's reputation, the reader begins to realize that standing up for one's beliefs and values is necessary to protect oneself and others. Remember that we have to include subject, opinion, and what the reader learns about human nature, which is, this is the subject, the opinion is that he exhibits power and this is how he does it, and that this is what the reader learns. So my first evidence sentence begins by saying this. Specifically, just after Slim finishes putting tar on a horse's split hoof, Curly shows up to the barn and asks Slim where his wife is, and as they leave the barn and walk into the bunkhouse together, Slim angrily replies, "You've been asking me too often. I'm getting damn sick of it. Goddamn sick of it. If you can't look at after your own goddamn wife, what you expect me to do about it? You lay off of me." He sounds very upset. So my first inference, my first analysis is to make an inference about the action in the text evidence. What the prompt specifically said to do was to explain how that evidence you chose shows their power. Okay, so in this case, Slim is showing power, I think, because he's yelling at his boss. He is not he's not allowing his boss to push him around. And in fact, he's pushing back and he's standing up and defending his own reputation. Curly has accused him and threatened him, and said just prior to this, has said something about, basically implied that he had been spending time with his wife, which was not the case. And so the biggest power that Curly has, that Slim has here over Curly, is the truth. He can tell him the truth, but he's not afraid to act annoyed. So what I decided to write about was this. I decided to recognize the fact that Curly is Slim's boss, and yet he isn't afraid to show that he's annoyed. So this is what I wrote. Curly is Slim's boss, so this is a reminder that Slim should not have power over Curly. Curly is Slim's boss, yet Slim is not afraid to show his clear annoyance with Curly in front of the other men, which shows an unexpected switch in who has the most power. So again, I'm using my evidence, talking about the evidence, to show how he has power. The next sentence of analysis needs to provide your opinion and explain how this text evidence relates to the claim up here, which the subclaim has to do with values and beliefs. So specifically, you are analyzing how the evidence proves your main idea by explaining how John Steinbeck uses his character's experiences to teach the reader about human nature. So in this case, Slim is telling the truth and therefore defending his reputation. And remember that my assertion is that the reader is learning that standing up for one's beliefs and values is necessary to protect oneself and others. So when he does this, he reminds the reader that it's important to stick with one's values and not compromise just because you've been accused of something. And so I wrote something like this, show you. So I have to refer to what the reader learned about human nature, and I have to show how the evidence proves and explains that. So I wrote, in this case, Slim defends himself by telling the truth, therefore defending his reputation. The way Slim acts in this moment reminds readers how important it is to stick to one's values. Notice that this part right here, the part where it reminds readers how important it is to stick to one's values, is basically me telling you what the character's experiences teach the reader about human nature. And that human nature in this case is the value of sticking to one's, the power of sticking to one's values can be extremely powerful and meaningful for others. Okay, so then that brings me to the second evidence sentence. So this whole chunk right here all relates to one another. This piece of analysis, analysis 1 and analysis 2, both tie into this piece of evidence as well as prove my claim up here. Now I'm going to go to the second set of evidence analysis, and I already have my evidence sentence written. So my evidence sentence in this case says, later on, when all the workers in the bunkhouse witness Lenny become frightened by Curly's aggression and crush Curly's hand, Lenny apologizes and Slim reassures Lenny that it is not his fault, then turns to Curly and suggests, listen, I think you got your hands caught in a machine. If you don't tell nobody what happened, we ain't going to. But you just tell and try to get this guy canned, and we'll tell everybody, and then you'll get the laugh. Remember that canned means fired. And so in this moment, first of all, if I'm going to explain how this evidence shows his power, what I want to say is, first of all, he's making up a story here, and he's telling Curly what he has to do. He says, I think you got your hand caught in a machine. He's making up a lie. He takes charge of the situation. That's a very powerful thing to do. And then he threatens him. He says, if you don't tell anybody what happened, we're not going to. But if you do, and you try to get this guy fired, then we're going to tell everybody what happened to you, and then you're going to be laughed at. Okay? So his ability to take charge in this situation, and then also reassure Lenny and make him feel good, who's vulnerable in this moment, really shows a lot of power. So what I decided to do to explain this is my inference, explaining how he is powerful in this moment, is that Slim demonstrates his ability to take charge of the situation by reassuring the most emotionally vulnerable man in the room and then turning around to threaten his boss. So my opinion or my inference has to do with his ability to take charge. That's where he's showing his power. Okay? Then I go on to my second analysis, which talks about how the evidence proves your main idea. And in this case, what I decided to do and what the reader learns is I kind of focused more on Lenny in this moment and how Slim shows power by taking care of Lenny. So I wrote, Slim's decision to protect Lenny demonstrates to the reader how people who use their strengths to safeguard those who are marginalized gain influential power from others. And I think that's very important to understand, that people have different kinds of power, and he is using his power of influence. The last sentence is a concluding sentence, and I need to transition to the next body paragraph. So I wrote, Slim aggressively asserts his power over Curly in order to speak up for what is right, but he also demonstrates his power of influence in more subtle ways. This part right here is the transition into what I'm